about Boeing. The president sort of at the end mentioned just the impact this trip will have on the Middle East. His goal is a more stable region and a peaceful world. But this is a business trip, and this is about big investment. While some are touting the efforts he's making, there are some eyebrows being raised as well. What I appreciate about what you were saying before we took the president's remarks is, how is that seen in the eyes of the American public right now?
Well, if we say this part is official business, and then this part is for the family business. This part is part of a peace accord that we're seeking. But this part is that my family is going to build these things and we're going to make this money and we're raising all of this money for our cryptocurrency venture. It is, look, Donald Trump doesn't ever have to face voters again. It's not that consequential for him. It's baked in with Donald Trump that these ethical quandaries exist. But I think for Republicans, it's a problem. I wrote about that this week for The Hill, talking about how what Al Gore did for fundraising really hurt him when he ran for president. The campaign finance violations, which sounds quaint now to talk about that as a kind of corruption, but it sure was. And voters have a distaste for corruption or the appearance of corruption. And again, it's not a problem for Trump. But two of the people who are sitting in that room, J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, who Trump is sort of pitted against each other as his potential successors as the next Republican nominee, they're going to have to answer questions about that. And their critics within the Republican Party or in a potential general election will certainly say, you stood around while Donald Trump was taking free jumbo jets from the Qataris. Not exactly the best citizens of the world, right? Hamas funding the dubious Qataris, and said nothing.
Right. And another newsworthy moment coming out of this trip already is Syria and pulling back on the sanctions with Syria as he met with that nation's interim leader in the last 24 hours. What are the optics of that, Chris? And what do we know about the relationship with Syria?
Well, we know that the Israelis are not particularly happy about it. And this is sort of a part of it. This is a shifting that's taking place. If we think to the first Trump term, the Abraham Accords, this historic accomplishment, the Abraham Accords were focused on Israel. It was about Israel and securing Israel. And we saw the fruits of it when the Iranians were trying to send drones and missile strikes on Israel, something I never thought that I would see in my life, where that the Gulf Arab states, Iran's sworn enemies, would protect the Jewish state, something that a decade ago even would have been unimaginable. So Israel really benefits in Trump term one. But if the new focus shifts over to helping the Saudis and the other Sunni Gulf states confront Iran, contain Iran, and deal with Iran, and it's less about Israel, that probably makes Israelis a little nervous about what might come next.
And I appreciate you bringing up Iran, because I keyed into on his comments when he was in Saudi Arabia, speaking specifically about Iran. He said he wants to end past conflicts, forge new partnerships, even if our differences are profound. And historically speaking, the differences are far more than profound. How would you dissect what he said and how that may be interpreted in the Middle East?
There are a lot of what I know about Middle East politics couldn't fill a thimble. It's a complicated, weird space. But I know that in American politics, the people who want the United States to take the most hawkish line on Iran are inside the Republican Party. The people who want a talking-based, a diplomatic-based approach with Iran are the Democrats. And we heard a lot about that in the 2024 election. We heard a lot about it in the 2016 election of Trump and Republicans criticizing Democrats for being too soft on Iran. But the Democrats have the good side of the issue politically. The non-confrontational, non-engagement, non-intervention, non-military approach to Iran is something that voters like, right? Voters don't particularly express a lot of interest in spreading U.S. values or diplomacy overseas. They certainly don't like the idea of U.S. military commitments overseas. So I think Trump is on probably pretty secure ground if he is trying to make a deal that American voters think will avoid military conflict with Iran.
Also complicated, Russia and Ukraine, and there's talk that the president would make a stop in Turkey tomorrow, and whether or not Putin would show up for that. The president had promised day one to end that war. Do you think this happens tomorrow, Chris?
He is a great television producer, right? So the drama it's reality TV. He had a reality TV show for a long time. This is great reality TV. Will Vladimir Putin show up for the big meeting? Can we get an accord in Ukraine? I don't know, but I do know this. The decision by Russians, by the Kremlin, to assume that the United States would stand around with its hands in its pockets while Russia violated these ceasefires and continue to kill women and children in Ukraine, continue this assault, was obviously mistaken. Politically, for Trump, with his own party, there's just no tolerance for letting the Russians push us around and do this stuff. That's not something Senate Republicans are going to be okay with. And I think Putin has put himself in a very difficult position because he overestimated Trump's ability to put the quietus on his own party as Putin did what he was doing in Ukraine.
If there is a face-to-face, that will be much tougher than the talk of friendship that we're seeing right now in Qatar. Chris Stirewalt in Washington, thank you.